So I host every month this Her Story Night, and so we pick one woman and we talk about her. Or last month we talked about actually 3 women. So if you've read the book or seen the movie Hidden Figures, it talks about Dorothy Vaughan and Mary Jackson and Katherine Johnson. So they're engineers and mathematicians at NASA. And so it's in the 50s and 60s. And so not only are these women working in predominantly male careers, but they're also women of color living in pre-integration Jim Crow laws, Virginia. And so they have a lot of these obstacles. And so as we were, we do a little bit of reading. I saw the movie and I wept through that. This empathy thing, kind of kicked in. And as I was thinking about what this discussion was going to look like, I was like, oh, these are some heavy issues. Some of these race issues, discrimination against women in the workplace. These are some heavy issues. And I was also very aware that usually in our group, we're a group of Caucasian women who really have no idea what it's like to be a woman of color living in Jim Crow law, Virginia. So I was like, are we going to talk about white privilege? This could get really dicey. And I was a little bit nervous about where this discussion was going to go. But the nice thing about having a gathering that's based on stories is that we were able to connect with the stories of these women. And so we talked about Mary Jackson, who was an engineer who designed rocket ships, how she built a soapbox derby car with her son. And they went through, she explained every little step of the process on how to build the soapbox car, what were the mechanics of it, how to make it go faster. And she really inspired her son. He became, he was inspired to become an engineer. And so by this story, was instantly relatable. It was something that we could all connect with and aspire to. That, hey, I would love to do that with my kid or with someone that I'm mentoring, to be able to show them something profound. And so as we talked about these women, talked about their stories, it created this space that really transcended these bigger, heavy issues that are hard to talk about. And we could just say, hey, she worked really hard for her mom, as for her children. Or she worked really hard to be the first woman to do this. She worked really hard to change the laws, to allow her to go to school so that she could be an engineer to get this job. And so it's remarkable to sit around and talk about women's stories and feel this empathy and feel this connection. And so talking about why women's stories matter, why it's important to tell these stories, is that it creates this space where we can feel accepted. We're like, hey, that person went through that thing. They experienced this. They had trouble with this. They struggled with this. It's okay that I'm struggling. And because we're connected mentally and emotionally when we hear people's stories, we're more prone to act. They've done all these studies on, when you ask someone to donate, if you just give them the facts, people aren't really very inclined to, pull out their pocketbooks. But if you tell them a story, if you connect with them emotionally, people are much more willing to act and overcome bias and facilitate just inclusivity. And so the reason why women's stories matter is because we need to create this space for women, for us to feel connected to each other so that we can achieve this big ocean purpose of all connecting and transforming the landscape. And I read an interview with this female director, and she was talking about her mission to get more women as screenwriters and producers and directors. And she said, it's an important issue, and it has always been my aim to have more women's voices heard and more women sitting around the table deciding what should go on our screens because it affects our culture. It affects the way we see the world. Most of the media we engage with on screen asks us to look at the world through male eyes. It's been written by men, produced by men, directed by men, and our stories about men. We see this as normal. It's not normal. It's not reflective of the real world experience. And even while work on screen is in the world of heightened reality, often fantasy, our dreams and desires, that makes it even more important. There should be a women's perspective and a women's voice on screen. And so by sharing our stories, the stories about important women in our lives and our own stories, we can transform culture. We can transform the real world. And so tonight we're going to talk about, stories of other women, but we need to cultivate our stories and share our stories and get them out there, write them down, give them to someone else, sit in the same room as other people and share your stories so that you can create that space where there's empathy, where there's a foundation of empathy so that we can overcome bias, overcome some of these difficult issues, and transform the landscape, which is Big Ocean's mission statement. So share your stories, write them down, and share the stories of other women who you know. So, yeah, excited to talk about our stories.